Hey everyone, and welcome to our 66th episode of BrewTalk with Mr.Beer. My name is Robert. I will be your host once again for today's show. We appreciate you guys, as always, taking the time out of your day to tune in and watch our little episodes here. Little housekeeping before we get started. If you enjoyed our episode today or any of our other past episodes, please just like it, comment on it, share it on your social media, and please make sure to follow us on all social media platforms: Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. We also post these on our blog page, mrbeer.com/blog. You can find our notes and the videos on there. Plus, we got some written blogs on there. We had one last week about making bread from trub in your beer, which is really interesting. A recipe that Ashley put together. So that's really exciting. And as we go into the next couple of weeks, we're going to be doing some new ventures with the videos, having some more in-depth conversations and details and stuff like that. So, we're a couple of weeks out on that still, but got some new stuff coming for you guys. All right, so today's topic is a pretty basic topic, usually what I like to stick to. And we're getting a lot of new brewers from Father's Day, obviously coming in. A lot of people got new kits. So I want to talk about the different stages of fermentation that you'll visibly see with your eyes. If you've made a lot of beer before, you can know, when you hit certain stages. If you've never made beer before, you have obviously no idea what to expect or what to be looking for. So we just thought it'd be helpful to kind of, point them out for you guys so you know. We'll try and do it real quick here for you. So I broke it up into 3 stages. That's just how I broke it up to make it easy, because I think it's what people would reference or expect. The first stage obviously would just be right after you pitch your yeast. So most people expect to see something right away, or within like an hour or two. You're probably not going to see much activity at all. You'll get some action starting up in the first 24 hours, but usually that, first 6 to 12 hour range, there's not much going on. The yeast is kind of waking up, rehydrating, getting ready to rock and roll. So, don't expect much to happen within the first 24 hours. After you pitch your yeast, just trust if you follow the directions and you got good yeast, it's going to ferment. I think the second stage is what I broke out to, which is very important and probably the most active stage that you'll see. This is what is usually referred to as high krausen. It's the most active stage of fermentation. This happens within the first 72-hour period. So usually they just label it as, from 0 to 72 hours is when you'll hit this range, but I thought it'd be helpful to break it out because most people like to pitch their yeast and then they expect immediate fermentation, but it doesn't work that way. So during the first 3 days, you will see some awesome action in your beer. You'll see the foam or the krausen start to rise on top. This is basically during the stage that yeast is eating up all of those simple sugars that are in what was your wort that's now becoming your beer, which is what makes them so active. So it's easier for the yeast to eat the simple sugars. It takes more work to eat the more complex sugars. So during this phase, they're just going to town and destroying all those simple sugars. So this is usually the first 72 hours. It can last a little longer. After this stage, what's going to happen is the fermentation activity is going to slow and subside, because now the yeast is starting to work on those more complex sugars and breaking those down and turning those into alcohol for your beer. So sometimes it can look like nothing is going on. Once you get like past 4 or 5 days in, you're like, what happened to my beer? But don't worry, it is still fermenting as long as you got that high krausen phase in the first 72 hours and you know that you got a good batch. It's fermenting away and doing its thing. So just let it run the course. It's going to look like that until you go to bottle your beer, which, depending on the instructions, is going to be 10 to 14 days or 21 days if you're brewing a bigger recipe of ours. That's why I always say to follow the instructions, obviously. But it's just good to know, because I think a lot of people will get the high krausen phase and then that will subside and then they'll think, what the heck happened? But most of the fermentation is done in those 72 hours. Now it's just eating off those complex sugars. And also, I wanted just to note that when you bottle your beer, you will get a slight secondary fermentation. They'll add a little ABV to your beer. Since we bottle condition all of our beers, you're adding sugar or Mr.Beer carbonation drops, which are super easy to use, into the bottle. And that's going to reactivate that yeast to eat those sugars again real quick. That's what creates CO2 in the beer, so it bumps that ABV up ever so slightly. Also, have you ever added fruit to a beer during later fermentation, like day 7 or day 10? Then all of a sudden the fermentation activity just kicks up again like crazy, even higher most times than what the original high krausen was. So that's also kind of like a secondary fermentation kickoff that you're getting there. So that's just something to note as well. So if you're brewing something that is big and heavy, so if you got a big beer like 9% or you're adding fruit or some other crazy, make sure you're putting your fermenter in something in case it leaks, because during, you know, big beers and the high corrosion, it rises. If you have a brewer doing, it'll fill your LBK, it can overflow out of the top. Don't worry about it, you're good to go. Just put it somewhere safe so it can catch it. So that's gonna wrap it up for today. I hope I kind of covered those 3 stages, or at least what I broke out into 3 stages effectively for you guys. So to recap, you just got stage 1, which is the first 24 hours. You don't see much activity at all right after you pitch your yeast. Stage 2 would be kind of high corrosion, which covers, you know, the first 72 hours, which is you're gonna see the most active fermentation. And stage 3 is just the remaining of fermentation, which is very low and not very active unless you're gonna add something crazy like fruit or something like that. So it's gonna wrap it up. Appreciate you guys tuning in. Hope you learned something about the stages of fermentation. As always, if you want to connect with us more or learn more or talk and communicate with like-minded brewers, you got to join our Facebook group, Mr.Beer's Brewing Society. We ask that you answer 3 questions. If you do not answer them, we will not let you in. It's pretty simple. Answer 3 questions, we'll let you in. We usually let people in like once or twice a week. We try to do it in batches so everyone can welcome on in with a big old hurrah and shebang, and you can, you know, learn all kinds of fun stuff in there, and we do some interesting things in there as well. So that's going to wrap it up. We will see you guys next week. Hope you have a great weekend. Make sure you're drinking some home brews. Cheers.